In this lesson, we're going to learn how to set up equations reading some words. Yes, word problems. Before we start, we need to know some of the common words that we use in these problems. First, consecutive integers. Consecutive means one after the other. For example, the Chicago Bulls won the NBA championship in consecutive years, meaning one after the other. So integers are whole numbers, including negatives and positives, and again, they're in a row if they're consecutive. So you might have something like 2, 3, 4. You also might have -3, -2, -1. You have some negatives. But in algebra, we set them up by letting the first unknown integer be x. The second one would be x plus 1, because if you think about it, if you were at 2, you would add 1 to get to 3. And if you were at 2, you would add 2 to get to 4. So you could keep going, x plus 3, x plus 4, x plus 5, etc. Now the next one is what some students get and some students don't, especially this odd. Even and odd integers. Yes, those are totally different, but when you set them up algebraically, you're going to set them up exactly the same way. Let's see why. If I have even integers, 2, 4, 6, 8, all right, and I let the first one be x, the second one is x plus 2 because 2 plus 2 is 4. And of course the third one would be x plus 4 because 2 plus 4 is 6. What are you adding to get to the next one? Most students see that. They go, even numbers, I got 2, 4, 6, alright. But what about odd? 1, 3, 5, 7. The same thing happens. I add 2 to get to the next one. I add 4 to get to the next one. I add 6. So the setup is exactly the same for even and odd. And those are little numbers. And when we read too fast, our brain actually sometimes will skip those. So you need to be really careful when you read those word problems. I suggest you underline some key words. Right? Another thing I'm sure you know is what is the perimeter of a rectangle. The perimeter is when you have adding up all the sides. And the formula you're used to seeing is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. We usually let the shorter side be the width and the longer side be the length. And of course you have 2 of them on each side. So the perimeter is the distance around. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to go through 4 steps, and I need to see all 4 steps. The first one, a lot of students skip, and I take off points. You want to define your variable, then you want to write your equation, you want to solve the equation, and you want to make sure you've answered the question. Did you find what they asked you to find? So let's just start. They're going to start out really easy. You could figure them out in your head, but this is algebra, so we need to write it down. Number 1, 9 times a number minus 2 is 5. What is the number? So we're only looking for one thing, and so I'm going to let x be my number. I'm just going to abbreviate, so that is defining my variable. Now I'm going to write the equation. This is where you're going to translate, right? So 9 times a number. Well, my number is x, so 9 times my x minus 2, then is always equals 5. So go back one more time. 9 times a number minus 2 is 5. 9x minus 2 equals 5. Then we're going to solve it. So I've written my equation. Now I'm going to solve. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And I'm going to divide by 9. And so I've solved it. Have I answered the question? What is the number? The number, and again, if you go back to the very first step, that's what you're looking for. X is 7/9. That is the number. Very easy. Let's look at the next one. Find 4 consecutive integers whose sum is 406. So 4 consecutive integers. It doesn't say even or odd. So since I need 4 of them, I'm going to let the first one always be x. The second one x plus 1, then x plus 2, and then x plus 3. So I've defined my variable. I'm looking for that on your paper. Find 4 consecutive integers, I wrote all those down, whose sum, what does that mean to do? Sum. Yes, that means to add. So I'm going to add all my integers. And it's going to equal 406. 4 consecutive integers whose sum is 406. So now I'm going to collect like terms. So I have 4x plus 6. I'm going to subtract 6 on both sides. So I get 4x is 400. So if I divide by 4, I get 100. Now if I were to stop right there, I'd get it wrong. Well, I get partial credit, but I didn't do what it asked me to do. Find 4 consecutive integers. I got to go back to here. All right, I found x, so that's 1, but what's the next one? That's right, 101, then 102, then 103. That's what you want to find, 4 consecutive integers. And if you added those up, you would see that really is 406. Let's look at the next one. Find 3 consecutive odd integers whose sum is negative 21. So again, I come over here and I always let my first one be x. Then the second one is odd, x plus 2. And the third one is x plus 4. Look at the top of the notes, odd integers, x, x plus 2, x plus 4. Whose sum? So I'm going to again add these up. Is negative 21 this time. So I'm probably going to be looking at some negative numbers. So collect like terms. So I have 3x plus 6 is negative 21. Subtract 6 on both sides. Divide by 3, and I'm going to get negative 9. Am I finished? No, I'm not. I've got to find 3 consecutive odd integers. Okay, so x is negative 9. X plus 2. That's what you want to do your next one. What is negative 9 plus 2? It's negative 7. So what's the next one going to be? That's right, negative 5. Those are consecutive odd integers. That's what you're looking for. Now let's look at number 4. Find 3 consecutive even integers whose sum is negative 36. Well, if you read those notes, even and odd, you set them up the same way. So this problem is going to start out just like number 3. So I have x plus 2, and x plus 4, and yes, I need to see that on your paper or I'm going to take off a point. All right, so find 3 consecutive even integers whose sum, so again I'm adding these up. Looks just like number 3, doesn't it? And you're going, well, how am I going to get even? You'll see, the math will work. All right, so collect like terms. Subtract 6. Divide by 3. Notice I got an even number. All right, so find 3 consecutive even integers. So again, go back to here, answer the question. So x is negative 14, x plus 2, and x plus 4. Remember, you just want them in a row. Those are the 3 consecutive even integers whose sum is negative 36. You could add those up. Check it out. Now we're going to move on to some other situations. Again, just practicing using different words. Number 5, we have a 115-inch board is cut into 3 pieces. Let's just stop right there. So I'm going to draw a board. okay, and I'm going to chop it into 3 pieces. Might not be to scale, okay? So that means the whole length of the board is 115 inches from end to end. Keep reading. The second piece is 4 times longer than the first piece. You see what's mentioned last in the sentence? What's mentioned last, the easiest thing you can do is let that be X. Alright? So the first piece, I'm going to let that be X. Go back and read now. The second piece is 4 times longer than the first piece. So 4 times, that means I'm going to multiply it times 4. So what am I going to multiply times 4? The first piece. So that's 4x. The third piece is 25 inches longer than the first piece. So again, we're comparing it to the first piece. That's good. So the third piece is 25 inches longer. That's not times, it's longer. So we're adding 25 to the first piece. So we could say 25 plus x, or we can say x plus 25. Really doesn't matter because we're adding. Okay, so go back and read that. Make sure you understand how we're going to set it up. How long is each piece? Well, how do we get that equation? Well, it's knowing that the whole length is 115 inches. Meaning if I add up all 3 pieces, that will equal to 115. So we want to collect like terms, solve for x. Let's see, that's going to be 90. Divide by 6. Let's see, 6 goes into 9 one time with 3 left over, so that's 15. Now I'm not done. Now remember, I said to define my variable. With me drawing a picture, that's good enough. If you didn't want to draw a picture, I would have come over here and said, okay, my first piece was x, my second piece was 4x, and the third piece was x plus 25. You either have the picture or you have this. You don't have to have both. Alright, now let's go make sure we've answered our question. How long is each piece? Well, the first piece is 15 inches long. The second piece is 4 times 15. So 4 times 15, I believe, is 60. And the third piece is x plus 25. And what is x? X is 15. So 15 plus 25, I believe, is 40. And I could check that out by adding those up together, and I'm going to get 115 inches. So on the test and on your work, if you don't put the inches or the centimeters, that's okay. I'm not going to take off about that. Number 6 is the same thing, just more practice, different words. We have a 40-inch board, again cut into 3 pieces. So end to end is 40 centimeters. The first piece is twice as long as the third piece. Okay, so this time the third piece is going to be x. Alright, so I'm going to put that there. The first piece is twice as long. Twice. What does that mean? Twice. That means 2 times. Right, so I need to multiply times 2. So the first piece is going to be 2x. Alright, the second piece is 1/3 as long as the third piece. So again, we're looking at that third piece. The second piece is 1/3 as long. Now that it's not the most common language, but 1/3 of something means to multiply by 1/3. So yes, we have fractions. Okay, so twice means 2 times. All right, that's something we're going to see a lot. Means 2 times. Okay, 1/3 as long, multiplying by 1/3. So we've defined my variable by drawing a picture. Now I'm going to write my equation. All 3 pieces add up to how long? 40. Now again, we could collect like terms, or if you want to, we could multiply through by the LCD to get rid of our denominator. I think I'm going to do it both ways, not to confuse you, but just some people might want to see it other way. So in order to add these with the common denominator, I would have to find a common denominator of 3. So remember, 2 over 1, if I multiply by 3 over 3, that's going to be 6/3. So this would be 6/3 x plus 1/3 x, and then 1, I would multiply by 3 over 3. Oops, I left out my x's. Okay, so then adding fractions, I keep the denominator, I'm going to keep my x, and I add the tops, and I would have 10/3 x equals 40. Then, to get rid of my 10/3, or to get x by itself, I would multiply both sides by that reciprocal, because that would give me 1x. 10 goes into 40 4 times 12. Right, so that is one way. The other way would be to take 2x plus 1/3 x plus x equals 40 and multiply by your common denominator, which is 3. I'd have to multiply all the parts times 3 and get 6x plus 1x plus 3x. 3 times 40 is 120. And I would still get 12. Choose one. We have been practicing this where we multiply 3 by the common denominator, but I did want you to see you can add the fractions. Let's go back. Have I finished the problem? How long is each piece? No, I just have x. And what is x? X is just the third piece, right? So x is 12. So it means the third piece is 12. So what's the first piece? 2 times 12. So the first piece is 24. What's the middle piece? That's 1/3 times 12, which is 4. And again, you could check that out by adding all those up, and that should equal to 40.